Good morning, everybody. James Pittman here, co-founder of Docketwise. I have with me Roman Zelichenko, who's the founder of LaborLess, a web-based application to assist in managing the public access file and notice posting requirements associated with filing labor condition applications with the Department of Labor. I have Chris Williams from Docketwise, who's helping to engineer the webinar. Welcome to all of our participants. So I guess first, what we want to do is we're announcing that the integration between Docketwise and LaborLess is live, and that is going to enable you to sync your Docketwise account to LaborLess. Roman's going to explain that and show us how that works. But first, let me just introduce Roman Zelichenko and give him a chance to tell us a little bit about himself. Roman, tell me about yourself, your background, and what led up to you creating LaborLess. How did you see the need, and how did it come about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James, for having me, and I'm really excited about this integration. Hi to everybody who is watching, either live or the recording. So, I mean, the really kind of short story is that I practiced immigration law myself. I was working in a sort of high volume H-1B practice, and as you all can imagine, if you handle H-1B visas, an important part of that process is the sort of LCA compliance process, right? Reaching out to your clients and making sure that they create the LCA notice or they post it, and then making sure they post it for a certain amount of days, 10 days, 12 days. People have their sort of different ways of going about it, creating that public access file or assisting them in creating that public access file, maintaining everything. It's a small piece of the H-1B puzzle in a sense, but it's an incredibly important one. And it's one that, regardless of what platform you use, when it comes to the LCA and PAF process, it was always manual and paper-based and sort of confusing. A lot of the clients I was working with were sort of tech companies, right? They were bringing in these really talented software engineers and other really technical people. And I was like, I'm supporting them with legal services, but the way that I'm supporting them is in some ways incredibly manual and requires this sort of paper process. And so there has to be a better way to do this, not to use the cliche term of there has to be a better way, but that's really what I thought. And so I had the idea of, this is fairly simple. You post it somewhere, you make sure it's tracked, the public access file is created, everything sort of is done in one place, and that didn't exist anywhere. And so I had this idea of building it, and I kind of went on a circuitous journey of leaving the immigration practice, working in tech for a while, sort of understanding, going through Lean Six Sigma certification and all that, working with product teams and project management, technology teams and legal, and sort of understanding how to build software. And then we launched LaborLess in early 2018 and have been adding on to it and building it and growing it ever since.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who's just joining us who may not be familiar with what these requirements are, who may watch this and not know what these requirements are, when you process or manage certain types of visa cases like H-1Bs or E-3s, there's a requirement of maintaining a public access file. So there's basically two requirements, two general requirements. You have to, first of all, you have to post notice. You have to post notice to your employees that you are in fact going to hire someone in one of these visa categories and that you're filing the labor condition application for that purpose. And you have to notice the employees for 10 business days, and it's prescribed in the Labor Department regulations how that's supposed to take place. And then the other requirement generally is that you maintain the public access file, which is a file of relevant documentation, like how did you set the wage? How did you determine what the prevailing wage was? And then how did you set the actual wage? And some other documentation has to go in there, and that has to be kept and made available for inspection per the regulation. So what Roman's done is actually automate this. This used to be, I remember doing this in my practice, and it was simply, you would give the client instructions and they would, either circulate emails, or they would actually, if it was an old-fashioned office in certain industries, they would actually just post a notice on the, let's say, the company bulletin board or the kitchen bulletin board or whatever it was. Way back in the day, people did this on paper and then they just maintained the paper file. But when you start doing a lot of these, it becomes important to have an electronic system so that you can manage what the dates are that you put the notice up, what the dates are that you put the notice down. You want to have a streamlined way of compiling the documentation that you maintain in the public access file, make sure that you've complied with the regulations and have that available easily so that it's kept safe and it's complete and you can just replicate the process. That becomes so very important when you do a volume of these. So Roman, tell us about how LaborLess does this. How does it accomplish this streamlining?
Sure. And I want to add on to that actually. And I'm looking at the list of attendees here. I mean, I see some familiar names, some unfamiliar names. I don't know how large your practices are, but one thing I want to note is that, at least in my experience and with some of our clients, you don't need to have a high volume practice to want to automate it. I came from a high volume practice. So my thinking was like what you mentioned, James. Well, if you're doing 100 or 200 or 1,000, you want to have a streamlined process, no brainer. But I've also found, and actually I learned this through some of our clients or users, when they have, let's say one of our attorneys works with startups and they might have 1 or 2 H-1Bs a year. And you think to yourself, well, why does that require, a platform like LaborLess? What I found is that it allows the lawyer to give very, very simple instructions to this sort of HR team within a startup company that probably isn't very sophisticated with immigration. And instead of training them on what the H-1B is, what the requirements are around the LCA, why the path has to be what it is, you could just say, hey, here's like a simple link to the LaborLess, your LCA posting site. And like, here's 1 or 2 instructions. Boom, you don't have to deal with anything else. And so the lawyer ends up being the one through the platform to make sure that the LCA is posted, the path is created automatically. And so it actually takes that burden off the shoulders of this startup company, not from the perspective of they're burdened with high volume, but from the perspective of they're burdened with like wrapping their head around this kind of strange, obscure process that if you're not immigration savvy, it's confusing, you can mess it up, et cetera. So it's been interesting to learn, again, through our experience as we're growing and taking on different types of clients, that from a high volume perspective, streamlining volume, no brainer, makes a lot of sense. But even from a low volume perspective, the value proposition is a little bit different, but it's still there of going to your clients and saying, hey, I know you have 2 H-1Bs a year, especially if it's their first one ever. You don't have to learn all this stuff. Just don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Here's like 1 or 2 small things you need to do. So I just wanted to give that sort of additional context for anyone here who might say, oh, well, I only have 1 high volume client. Everyone else is low volume. So it might not be, I just want to say that there is actually, we've found value for different types of practices.
Well, that's very important. That's an important point, because one of the things that you have to do as an attorney when you are dealing with a client who has not filed these applications in the past and is doing it for the first time is you have to educate them on what the requirements are. And that can take substantial time, and you would have to provide them instructions. So if you have a streamlined way of educating the client and making it as easy as possible for them to comply with the regulations, I mean, let's face it, you don't want to have to provide a 10-page memorandum to the client with a bunch of Labor Department regulations and say, I need you to meet all of these points. Then you're going to wind up in a long discussion with them, and it's going to be an obstacle for them. So if you have a very direct, streamlined way for them to comply with the requirements without having to do a lot of education, that is absolutely awesome. And Roman, is there? I mean, I'm sure the price points are wonderful for people, but is there a tier? Is there sort of a plan if they're only doing a smaller number of cases? Can they pay per case, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we rolled out, and it's actually become one of our most popular kind of pricing plans, just a per LCA pricing strategy.
Okay.
And this, so like there's a small onboarding fee, it's $500 just for us to get set up and like work with you and get you onboarded. And then after that, the price is $50 per LCA, or if there's some like premium features that go up a little bit from there. And basically, whenever you have an H-1B visa, as you only pay for it as you go. And the nice thing about that actually is, and I tell this, a lot of our clients or law firm clients do this, you're adding an additional service. If you're going to use a platform like LaborLess, you're actually helping your client, your H-1B petitioner client, with something that previously they used to have to do. And so I always recommend to our clients, you should charge for that. Like, you're spending a little bit more time on it, right? You're taking something off their hands, you're adding value, you should charge for it. So most of the clients, as far as I know, they upcharge And so it actually, not only does it pay for, does LaborLess pay for itself through this sort of small bump in their H-1B fee. They could make it, they're not going to maybe make a ton of money off of it, but it could be a small source of revenue generation. So if it's $50 per LCA for us and they're charging $100 extra on top of their H-1B fee for their clients, you just made $50. It just makes it easier to, I think, utilize software. So that's always a recommendation for me. We also do have sort of like a monthly, volume plan. That tends to be, we usually, the folks who use that tend to be our petitioner clients. So we support companies directly too, right? Some people, as you all probably know, have sort of robust in-house teams, especially if they have higher volumes, and they handle the LCA process. And so they are LaborLess clients. But certainly for some of the smaller and mid-sized firms that use, law firms that use LaborLess, I think they sort of charge their clients for it accordingly. So from a pricing perspective, that's how it works. Now I can go through a quick demo. I invite everyone. I'll do a very, very quick run through because I want to be conscious here of everyone's time. So I could do a quick demo of LaborLess and how it works, and then I'll go into how the integration works for Docketwise users. I do invite everyone to go to our website too, laborless.io, and we have there's a little drop down for product, and there's a demo on there. So you can also watch that at your own leisure. It's only about 7 minutes long. But let me share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. By the way, I know this is a webinar format, I think. Can participants or attendees ask questions, James, or no?
Yeah, sure. Of course they can. And you can put your questions in the chat. Feel free, if the attendees have questions, put them in the chat and we will answer them as they come up.
Yeah, definitely. I like to do, even though this is more of a demonstration than sort of a panel discussion, my most important thing is just providing value on the spot. So for anyone who has any questions as we go, please, please drop it in the chat and let me know. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. Can everyone see my screen here? Or James, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, yes.
Great. So I'll go through I'm in sort of our admin account. So just on the left-hand side, you'll see clients and admin. You can ignore those two tabs. That doesn't, sort of ordinary users won't see that. But when you come onto the LaborLess platform, you are automatically brought into your dashboard. So this dashboard shows you which LCAs are currently live for your petitioner clients. What that means is these LCAs are posted on a sort of web-based, public-facing LCA bulletin board, if you will, that is putting their affected employees on notice of the LCA. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So we capture, of course, some of the LCA-related information, case number, title, location. You can put multiple locations in here if your the employee or the beneficiary is going to be working at multiple work sites. As you can see here with my very creative fake companies, James Pittman Consulting and Acme Software Solutions, so if you have multiple clients, which you all probably do, that have H-1B visas, you'll see your different clients here. You can, of course, filter by them. You also see the date the LCA was posted, right? The LCA notice was posted and how many days it's been posted for. Now, obviously, the 10 days is actually, if we want to nerd out about this and if folks have questions about it, I'm more than happy to discuss. The common practice has always been 10 business days, not calendar days. But if you read the regs say 10 days. And I think folks for the longest have been quite conservative and posted. Some of our clients default to 10 or 12 or 14 or even 20 days just to make sure. The one thing I will note for the folks here watching or listening, so the Department of Labor issued a couple of FAQs last year when COVID first hit. And I don't know if this was by mistake. I think it was only in one of the FAQs, but they were talking about LCA compliance. And they wrote in one of them, and I should probably remember which exactly one it was, but they wrote calendar days in one of the FAQs. And now I know that FAQs are not official, kind of regulation, but it was coming, it's official document from the Department of Labor. And so I think that helped me hint towards the fact that it probably is 10 calendar days, not business days. But anyways, you're able to sort of course, post for however many days you want. So we do the kind of quick calculation here of how many days it's been. So this does count calendar days, of course. And live just means that it's actually posted on the LCA bulletin board. I'll click into this very quickly. So I'm going to click into this software engineering director for Acme Software Solutions. As you can see, I'm going to click on it, and it pulls up some data in the background, just kind of background data on the position, who created it. So who created this posting? If you have multiple staff, this helps you kind of keep track of who's doing what. And then importantly, of course, the days that it was posted, right? And the day it was taken down. Now the system automatically captures it. For the folks here who are listening or watching, I don't know how you coordinate with your petitioner clients, but as far as I've seen in my practice and talking to other lawyers, usually it's some version of you send instructions via email to your client, right? It's the same email and you just attach the notice, you maybe attach prevailing wage docs, et cetera. You tell them what to do and you tell them how many days to post it for. And then of course you have to confirm with them when they've posted, and maybe you confirm with them when they've taken down to keep track, et cetera. Do you know if they posted? Probably not. Do you know if they actually took it down when they tell you? Probably not, right? And then so what do? You come in every couple of months or maybe years and maybe do a public access file audit or something like that. Worst case scenario, you don't do anything. Maybe they get audited and potentially get dinged, right? So what's nice about LaborLess is that it automatically captures this. There's no question as to whether or not they posted an LCA and whether or not they took it down and when it happens. And of course, this data is then put automatically brought into the public access file. The other thing that we have is we allow you to track the PAF expiration. Now, as you all know, the PAF expiration changes, right? So generally speaking, usually in the beginning, it'll be a year past the expiry of the LCA. So let's just say approximately 3 years plus the 1, right? But then, of course, if someone quits or is fired or their last date of employment is before the LCA expires, technically, the PAF only has to be held onto for 1 year past the last date of employment. So you do have the opportunity to go in here, for example, and tag it or change the PAF expiration date. And this just makes it easier to manage your public access files, right? You have the expiration date right here. And I'm not going to click on it yet, but when you create the posting, the system automatically compiles the public access file. I'm going to click on this petitioners tab here. So there's a little drop-down menu. I'm just going to go to the primary tab. Just these are your sort of primary, just traditional employers. We do have a feature here for third-party work sites. Usually that means your client maybe is a staffing company or consulting company, and the H-1Bs that they're hiring are going to work at another company, right? A third party. And sometimes what we did was we enabled users to create a separate, almost sub LCA posting site that only shows the LCAs that are posted for that particular third-party work site. So to give you an example, let's say your client is Deloitte, right? A consulting company, and they hire thousands of software engineers, and they hire a software engineer that's going to go work at IBM, right? So Deloitte is the petitioner, right? But IBM Works Office is the work site. And so what we found out is in some cases, Deloitte, which is the petitioning company, they don't want all of their work sites to see every other LCA posting, right? If you think about it in regular life, you send the LCA to Deloitte, they go to their contact at IBM, right? And they say, please print this and post it on the right in the pantry, like you said, James, or the kitchen or whatever else. Mm-hmm. So we do have an opportunity for you to create a third-party worksite LCA posting page. It's a little complicated, but I just wanted to go through that in case anyone here has sort of consulting or a staffing agency type of clients. But the general way that people use LaborLess is the company, the petitioning client, has a profile within the platform. It's super easy to create. There's very little information really that we need. And when you create this petitioner profile for the company, it automatically creates a unique URL, as you can see here, and I'll click on that in just a moment, that is effectively your LCA bulletin board. Mm-hmm. So when you create the LCA posting, you make sure to create it for the correct petitioner. And when you hit post, boom, it shows up on the URL of that petitioner. Right. So it's just their unique web space where their LCAs are being posted. So I utilize Acme Software Solutions Inc. as like my go-to test account. So I'm going to click on this URL button. And as you can see, it just opened up a new tab. This is an image, so you can have the logo of the company here, or you can have text, whatever you want. And then under here, you actually do see your bulletin, right? This is sort of a subset of the information. If I go back very quickly to the dashboard, right? So on the dashboard, you have this information. On the public facing page, you basically have a subset of that information, just what you need people to see. The work site is important, the case number so they can see it. And then of course you can click on this file button and it'll show you that 9035, or if you have a one-page sort of notice document, what have you, or you can drill down into it and it just gives you the same information. Click details and just give you that same information.
Well,
So
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
please.
Well, yeah. So in complying with the notice requirements, the petitioner is required to make the employees, aware of where this information can be viewed. So, is there a recommendation for how they should do that? How do they send the URL to their employees? Is there a preferred way of doing that, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and James, as you alluded to before, the important thing with LCA notice is that number one, affected employees are aware of the location of LCAs, whether physical, by the way, or digital. And then number two, they have access to that location, right? So DOL often talks about, I think, of like, if you put your LCA in the office, but in a janitor's closet that's locked, you're not providing sufficient notice because people can't see it.
That's right.
So online, it's the same type of thing. Right, when you create the petitioner profile, which automatically creates that petitioner's unique LCA bulletin board through LaborLess, they get this URL, right? The nice thing about it, it doesn't have the company's name. A lot of people are, they're compliant, but they don't want to, announce to the whole world, here's all of our LCAs that you can Google easily on the web, for example. So we do specifically hash this and give you like a, kind of a custom letters and numbered type of URL. So you would provide this URL to your company. The way you do it will depend on the company. So for example, if you have a company that has an intranet, right, like an internal system, you can have them put it as a link on their internal careers page, right? A bunch of our clients, for example, listed on their public facing website under careers. And I say careers because DOL typically has said something like, when you're providing notice, just put it where you talk, where you can notify people about job opportunities. So usually that's some sort of a careers page, but it could be in other places too. We have one client and who works with startups and small companies that don't have an intranet. They probably just use Slack, for example. This company, this law firm, has their clients that they onboard onto LaborLess just add the URL, maybe like a little blurb in their employee handbook, which of course every employee gets, right? And they're supposed to read. So there are a number of ways. I think the most traditional way is adding a URL on the company website. But if it's a startup or I don't know, maybe they don't have a website, like whatever it might be, as long as you notify your employees in some reasonable way of this URL, and of course they'll always have access to it because it's as long as they have internet, you should be compliant. Now, I always tell all of our clients, I can't provide legal, counsel, of course, to our users, but I always work with all of our clients, and they'll send me their PAFs. I might give them some suggestions, and I certainly work with them to understand, okay, how do you interact with your petitioner clients? Great. Here are maybe some recommendations of language you can use, or maybe a good way for them to go about posting. So I definitely love to partner with the clients to figure it out for them. I think it's helpful for them, and it's also a learning experience for me because I get to see how different law firms interact with their clients and how they sort of go about H-1B and sort of LCA compliance. Does that answer, or does that make sense?
That does, of course, that makes sense. That's a very good explanation. All right, cool. So yes. So what's next here?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the posting or to the dashboard here, and let's just go ahead and I want to show you how to create an LCA very quickly. Mm-hmm. You click on new LCA. There are a couple of fields here that you all can ignore because they're just sort of admin fields that we see that you might not see. So you basically, once you have the number, you don't have to have it. I know some people like to post before they submit into Flag. And as you all probably know, iCert used to give us the number before we submitted it. Flag does not. It gives you this crazy printout review thing with like a million characters as an ID. You know, and I could talk to you all about whether or not you can post after you've submitted to Flag or before. I argue that you can post after you've submitted, but that could be like a question if people want to ask it. So let's assume that you have the number. You would just enter it, right? You would enter it in, you would choose the petitioner. Now remember, there was that list of petitioners, and we have these companies. And so whichever one you select, that's the public facing, that's the LCA bulletin board it goes to. So this is important. You know, the job title, so let's just say software engineering director, right? Posting location. So this actually, we're changing this. This is supposed to say worksite locations. In our latest update on the admin page, it says posting. So you all can look at this as the worksite. So let's say it's New York, New York, right? So you know that you press enter and it gives you a discrete location, right? Now, this is sufficient if, let's say, the company only has one office. But I always like to use JP Morgan because I interned there as a kind of college as an example, because they have like 15 offices in New York City. So saying New York, New York is not sufficiently clear as to which actual work site this person is going to, right? So in that case, and as you all know, on the LCA, they do ask for, even for third-party work site, names and addresses now. So you can put, you know, 270 Park Avenue, right? New York, comma, New York. Oops. Press enter, and that gives you a second location. Then you could do something in Philly and whatnot. So the idea here is that you can add all of this information in and have the multiple work sites be listed. The number of positions, this is just a way for you to sort of easily track. You know, some people do multi-slot LCAs basically. Again, if you have third-party work sites, but we can ignore all these. These are just sort of custom fields that most people don't really need. And so this is where you would upload your LCA notice. So I'm going to go ahead and click on file, and I'm going to go ahead and upload an LCA. The rate of pay document, now you're getting into the public access file, right? The rate of pay document is basically your, or otherwise known as your actual wage document, would be the document that you usually send to your client, probably via email, that has the actual wage of the person that is being hired. Sometimes it also has these sort of system of wages information. So it'll say, for example, individual being hired under LCA number blah, blah, blah is going to, under the position software engineering director, is going to make $174,051.65. I don't know, right? Exact wage. And then below it, a lot of times, either in a separate document or maybe on the same one, you would say something like, we determine wages by following the, by using the following process. And then it's like a bulletin, let's say, bullet list. And it says, we look at your job duties, we look at your years of experience, we look at your diploma, your degree, et cetera. You provide that system of wages. So this is all a requirement for the path. So you would upload that here the same way that you would send the document to your client. And same thing with prevailing wage. It's probably a screenshot of your ONET, or if you're using like a Radford survey or whatever you're using, you would always provide that as part of the path. So here you would go ahead and upload that too. There are a few other fields that we can sort of skip. There's just additional things that you can upload if needed. And like for some clients, we customize this, right? If you have, I don't know, if you're if your client's a willful violator of, H-1B willful violator, maybe they need to have a separate memo, right? That doesn't fit with any of these. So we'll give you space for that. Ultimately, you will go back in and upload the signed certified LCA just to sort of complete the path. But for now, we won't do that. And then again, if you want to tag it with an expiration date. So let's just do, I don't know, June 18th, 2024. Great. And we're going to go ahead and hit save. And so you'd create that LCA posting, and it would show up here as, it would show up here on your dashboard. And if it looks good, all you would do is hit this green button and it would post. And so now when you post it, what happens is it automatically shows up on the Acme Software Solutions page, right? On the sort of public facing bulletin board. And so it's that simple. What you do is, instead of emailing back and forth with your client, you would go into LaborLess, you would upload the information and the, LCA docs, and you would hit post, and your LCA is now live on this particular client or particular petitioner's LCA bulletin. Now, yeah,
Go ahead. I
Zelichenko.
want to ask. I want to ask a question. So, okay. So you alluded to this question. So the question is whether to post notice before you've submitted through Flag or after you've submitted through Flag. I mean, the way that we used to do this on the iServe portal, the most common way of doing it was you filled out the application on the iServe portal and you got a draft version of the LCA before you posted it. And then before you hit submit, you had the client post and you confirm that they had posted. Maybe I used to ask them to take a picture of the fact that they had posted it. So I had verification of that, and then you submit it. So you're telling us, so you have an argument that you can actually submit through Flag and then get the case number and you can start posting notice after you've submitted. What's your argument for why that's appropriate?
My argument for the reason for why that's appropriate is because number one, Infosys does it. So, and okay. They're scrutinized like more than anyone else. And so if they're doing it, I suppose that's okay. Obviously that's not a legal argument. The legal argument is that the Department of Labor regs, they don't say it has to precede. I think it has to just be before or on the day of submitting your LCA. So it's on the day of could be afterwards. So as long as if I submit it at 9 a.m, I get that flag, the number back, and then I post it at 9:30. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, and many people agree with me, that's fine. But the reason people don't do it is because they're not the ones posting. And so if you, the lawyer, submit the LCA through Flag for your client, right? If you're the one doing that process, you have to make sure you get confirmation from them that they've posted first before doing that, because if you submitted and you get that form 9035 and you send it to your client and say, hey, make sure to post it today, you have no control over that, right? You can ask them to, but if they don't, right, they're technically out of compliance. I mean, is anyone going to come check and ding them for posting the next day? Maybe not, right? But we're lawyers and our job is risk mitigation and making sure our clients are compliant. So if you want to be 100% compliant with the law, you need to make sure they post it the same day that you submitted it. Now, if you have control over posting, which our law firm clients do via LaborLess, then there's no issue. You go ahead, you submit it into Flag, you get the LCA back, and then it's your response. You have control over the process. You go ahead and upload it onto LaborLess. I think it's the better way to go because you can skip the step of creating, this sort of like one-page posting document. It decreases the number of documentation that you have. But that's sort of my argument for it. I'm not pushing it onto people, that's just my idea. And I suggest it always to people as you'd be surprised. I've talked to people who've practiced for many, many years. And I tell them that they're like, huh. And I was like, well, why are you doing it the way you're doing it now? And they're like, I don't know. We came into the firm and that's how we did it. And I've never really questioned it. So I kind of like this idea of being the person who thinks about just this. And so I can come in and sort of, push back on this a little bit and say, well, why, why do you do this? So that's kind of my argument for it. Again, not necessary. We have a lot of clients that still post a one pager, but it's just something to think about for you all as the law firms who may potentially want to support your clients with LCA compliance.
Absolutely. It's the more that you can make sure that you're covering all the bases, that you're compliant, that the compliance is streamlined and easy to achieve. It's something that can be replicated. It's something that your staff can use, and you eliminate having to go back and forth with the client as much as possible. It's a real labor saver, and it's a very nicely designed product. It's a very streamlined interface. You want to tell? I mean, I have a question about the user interface. Is that something? Sure. I mean, how did you arrive at this configuration? I mean, what was your thinking about? Because it's very attractively designed, looks very streamlined.
Oh, thank you. I'm hiring for a sales position, James. So if you, I'm just kidding. No, thank you for that. I mean, honestly, this was, I have a CTO who's really talented and wonderful, and he's now an immigration expert as well. Actually, we're both immigrants, so we do have that connection to it also. So yeah, I mean, this just makes sense to me, but we actually redesigned this a little bit recently. We had a whole overhaul. So you all are looking at the most recent version. It looked a little bit different when we first launched. So it's also, Docketwise as well. You guys are constantly iterating and changing and updating things. So we take feedback from our users and we ask them, what would you like? What would be helpful, right? What would make it easier for you? we'll put a button in a different place or a different color or something like that. Again, for me, this is usability. I tell people, I get on sales calls all the time, and obviously here I'm showing you all how it works, but I obviously I would love for people to try it and to sign up and to do this. Mm-hmm. I left my job as an immigration attorney, which is stupid because I had a good career ahead of me, but I was like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this LCA thing. It's just bothering me, and I want to build something for it. So I always look at this as trying to build value for the industry, for practitioners, of course, and ultimately for our clients who just don't want to deal with this kind of a thing. So the way that I look at this is whatever can make it better. Again, from a user perspective, I'm all ears, because I want to make sure that, this is actually doing the thing that I set out to do and left my job. And my poor mother was like, Roman, what's wrong with you? You went to law school for 3 years. You had a great career, and now you're leaving it to do this. And I'm like, no, trust me, we need this. We need this. So I want people to give me feedback always on interface. I want to talk about the integration.
The integration. Let's get to it.
Because I'm particularly excited. I know this is sort of like a joint call, but I'm so excited that Docketwise is sort of really pushing heavily into business immigration, because as you know, a lot of companies just run the gamut of different types of cases that they do. And so really focusing on, the sort of business side of it is, I think, really, really exciting. So this was really perfect timing. Our integration is actually quite simple. For people who have been using Docketwise for a while, you might have individual law clients, right? You might also have company clients, right? HR clients. So with LaborLess, one of the more annoying things, I think, that is required, of course, is creating the profile for all of your companies, right? It doesn't take very long. So let's just if I click on new petitioner, there's not much to add, right? But if you've been practicing for 10, 15 years, you might have 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 or more clients, right? Company that file for H-1Bs, and that onboarding process would actually be quite annoying on LaborLess. We have clients who do it, maybe who don't use Docketwise, for example, and it's fine. But the thing with software is we always think about what's the best way to do it. So the way that our integration works with Docketwise, for now, we're going to continue to build on it for sure. And I'm looking forward to doing more, creating more ways of sort of having information talk back and forth. But right now, the way that the integration works, so for anyone who is on LaborLess, if and when you want to sign up, all you would do is you'd click on your name here, you'd go to the settings tab, and there's just an integration box here. So this is our very first, which is very exciting for us. I'm now fully connected. If you're already logged into Docketwise, all you would have to do is just click. It would say connect. You would just click the connect button. So I can actually do that. I'll hit remove. So now the API is off. We're no longer our pipes are shut down. So because I'm logged into my Docketwise account, right, I can go back to LaborLess, and all I have to do is click the connect button, and I'm good to go. It takes the credentials from Docketwise and logs in. If you're not logged into Docketwise, you would hit the connect button. It would just give you kind of a sign in, if you use Google to sign into some kind of app, you would put in your Docketwise credentials, and that's it. So once you do it, it's super easy. Once you do that, you're integrated. And now the way that you utilize the integration is you'd go to your petitioners tab, right? Again, remember, these are your company clients, right? Your tech company, your consulting company, et cetera. And so we've got this button here now that says import from. So you click on that and you get a drop down, and it says Docketwise, right? Because we are now connected to it. So I'm going to click on Docketwise. And what it does is it brings me to a list of all of the companies that I have, the sort of petitioners, the HR company clients or contacts that I have in Docketwise. Notice I already have 3 of them in LaborLess, right? So for purposes of this demonstration, I created 3 very incredibly interesting company names: FinTech Sample Company, Sample Biotech Company, and Webinar Sample Company 1. These are really exclusive employers. And so, they're hiring H-1Bs, right? And so the idea here is that if you want to, all you have to do is you just click on it, on one of them, or you can click on multiple. Of course, if you're doing this for the first time and you have a number of them, you can just click select all. I mean, I won't do that because I have a number that's already integrated. So now I'm going to click on Webinar Sample Company 1, and I hit import selected. and boom, it brought us back to our primary petitioners tab. And if you see down here, we have webinar sample company 1. If you click on it, that data that is in Docketwise, or at least part of that data, right? The address, the phone number, or rather the email address down here, has been preloaded into LaborLess. And the most important thing is when you do that, LaborLess automatically creates that public facing URL for the company, right? So you don't have to do any of these steps. You just pull it right in to LaborLess, and it creates these sort of public facing bulletin boards for all your clients. And so theoretically, once you do that, you can start posting LCAs for the company. You might want to go in and add some documentation that potentially you don't have in Docketwise because it's very specific to the LCA and PAF. Yeah. And so you would go in and add some of that. But then this way you can very quickly add your 10, 20, 30, 50 petitioners and start using LaborLess. And then again, you go back to the dashboard. If you want to create that new LCA, right? There's our webinar sample company 1 already right there. And you'd go ahead and create that LCA posting and start posting for the company right away. And yeah, I mean, from an integration standpoint, that's about it. It's as simple as uploading and bringing in the petitioner clients that you all have in your Docketwise account.
Yeah, well, it couldn't be easier. I mean, it's really a huge value add, and we're super excited about the integration. I mean, it really dovetails with, with our whole push right now. We're in the midst of a major expansion of our business immigration features, and we're going to be adding an entirely new set of business immigration features to cater to firms that do more employment-based immigration. I mean, we already have a lot of things covered, but we're just adding additional complexity and sophistication to our features. And this is just absolutely a wonderful addition, this integration with LaborLess. Roman, on your side, what do you integrate with any other products already?
So not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
So
as you know, this is our first one, and I want to say this because we're on a call with Docketwise. Like, I am appreciative to you all, to your team, for being, sort of spearheading this, because I've talked to, believe me, I've talked to every other company. And so we were in talks, and, for example, with INS Zoom before the acquisition, we were in talks with INS Zoom, but of course that's just more complicated now. But I think that the way forward in the immigration industry is for different platforms to talk to each other, right? It makes it easier for someone like me who says, look, I want to solve a specific problem and I want to solve it really well. And I want to do it today rather than having to wait for, an existing company to solve that problem. And it allows for all of us to sort of communicate with one another and enable law firm clients to benefit from all these at the same time, rather than having to choose one or the other. So I'm definitely excited for integrations. For anyone here who's listening, if you're like, oh, I wish you also integrated with this, reach out to me, let me know. Maybe I can use that to push some of these other companies to sort of open up their APIs and integrate with LaborLess and other companies too. But yeah, for now, this is our very first one, which is very exciting for us.
It's really the way the whole industry is going. These integrations, I mean, allowing people this end-to-end seamless flow of data from their intake to the client, to their opening of the matter, to their case management, to their form production, to their LCA compliance. These integrations are making things more and more seamless. And this is just such a vital component for firms that do employment-based immigration. Well, it is really an attractive product, and we're so happy to have this integration and to have Roman with us. Roman, what else do you want to, anything else you want to tell us about the product? Do we have any questions? Let me take a look in the chat.
Yeah, I was looking at the chat. So Kevin, hey, Kevin. So Kevin asks, are the LCA posting requirements the same for H-1B extensions as for initial applications? I mean, yeah, generally, yes. The posting requirement, the 10-day posting requirement or 10+ day posting requirement at the work site, or again, digitally, as long as you note the work site, is always going to be the same for extensions for, if you're moving to a new company and they're filing a new H-1B for you, obviously for a cap subject H-1B, they're all as long as you have to create the posting and then of course a public access file along with it, LaborLess is there. By the way, E3s are the same. So if you do have any companies that hire folks from Australia or H-1B1s, right? If you do Chile or Singapore, all of those have LCA posting and public access file requirements. Obviously, much lower numbers than the traditional H-1B. Same thing for cap exempt, right? Cap season is a very popular time, but there are a number of firms that support universities and research institutions and hospitals and others who might have some form of cap exempt H-1B status, in which case there might be filings throughout the year. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned from a LaborLess standpoint, the requirements are the same, and so LaborLess is there to support.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, of course. The other thing I guess that I would show maybe is just, I'll very quickly, a couple of things that we recently kind of launched, an analytics tab, which basically gives you insight into your LCA compliance. We're always, we want to add more stuff to it. We came up with just a few simple things to show here, and as like a sort of graphs and charts. It can show you by petitioner, it can show you by location, right? By status, so how many are completed or open or denied or what have you. And yeah, but this just gives people some information at a glance. And then of course, the big question was, and this is something we just released pretty recently. Okay, well, great, everything's in the platform, but what if I want to pull the data, sort of the metadata, right? I want a report of all the stuff. So you can now export your LCA data. So let's just do from, let's just do from January through today, right? Status. So you could do different types of status. I'm going to click all, and you click on export, and just sort of gives you a table of everything. You can either copy this table and upload it into, if you have a spreadsheet, or you can download it as a CSV and then upload that as well. So just, we want to build different features that give people more control over their data and information. We've got a few other cool things coming down the pike as well that we're currently working on. But I thought that I'd share these, which would be quite cool.
Well, I have two questions. I mean, I just occurred to me when you were showing me the analytics. Have any of the users ever mentioned that they were in fact audited, or their clients were audited, and did, has anyone sort of told you that the format and the format and the data in LaborLess was used or during an audit? I was just curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have not had any of our clients. So and I don't know if I've ever publicized this, but we've now posted over 5,000 LCAs across our clients, which is, if you're Deloitte, that's 1 year's worth for one client, but combination of companies and law firms, et cetera. So there's been a lot of opportunities. We have not heard from any of our clients yet. We did have a client that was getting audited, but the LCA they needed was right before they signed up for LaborLess, which kind of, I was like, we were almost there. Obviously having an audit would be great for us, because assuming that the company has done things well, we would be able to say our clients have been audited. DOL has looked at the presentation of information via LaborLess and they've given it the okay. We haven't had that. However, one of our clients is actually good friends with the DOL kind of auditor person, and showed that as they were signing up for LaborLess, because they had the resource, they kind of went to them and said, hey, we want to sign up for this platform. This was like 2 years ago. And they said, can you take a look at this? Obviously, unofficially, it wasn't like an official DOL kind of review of the platform, but it was a DOL auditor, someone who actually does these kind of LCA and PAF audits. They looked at it and were like, yeah, this is great and really simple and easy. I also had the opportunity to demo LaborLess to the Department of Labor a couple of years ago. I literally drove down to DC and had all these people from like the ETA, OFLC, and all these folks watching me give a demo. And this was like before we had a lot of these features. And again, they didn't give me an official feedback, because I don't think the government can play favorites or do that. But just unofficially, they were very impressed and liked it. So for us, that's sort of been because it's more of a compliance tool rather than just case management. That has been sort of, all those notches have given us a lot of confidence that, this is way better than anything people are doing right now, sort of manually and on paper.
And I guess I just wanted to ask, I mean, I'm not asking you to share anything that you don't want to share, but I mean, do you want to let us know what your general direction is? I mean, what do you see as your next, thing for the platform?
Yeah, I mean, so we're working on a lot of small features, small updates. So for example, right now with COVID, well, one thing that we noticed with Flag, when Flag came out, was now there was no I-200 number. And what we used to do was we used to force people to lock in that I-200 number right away, because usually they had it when they were posting with iCert, right? You can prep it. You could prep it in iCert. We couldn't do that, so we had to like change the fields around. Now with COVID, we've realized that some people who work from home, their work site might be in a different MSA than their home, right? In which case you have to upload multiple prevailing wage documents. And so right now, for example, if you go to the dashboard, click on new LCA, we have one option, like one button to upload your prevailing wage document. So we just had a client that, they took their screenshots from ONET and they had to combine them for, let's say, New York, New Jersey, and then Philadelphia, like whatever it might be. They had to combine it into one PDF to easily upload it into LaborLess. But then they reached out to us and they're like, hey, we're getting a lot of clients now that are filing H-1Bs and LCAs for someone they're working remotely, but separate MSAs, which require separate LCAs, require separate prevailing wage kind of information. And so that's, it's a small tweak, but the idea is like, oh, well, right, of course, that makes sense. More people are working remotely or from home. We need to sort of make sure that our platform continues to configure with sort of the existing reality of immigration, and more stuff on reports and analytics. In terms of specifics, if I get into detail, people here will fall asleep. So I don't want to put anyone to sleep.
No problem. But another question is, what about perm? I mean, are you going to do? Yeah, I mean, especially when they eventually get around to moving perm, the 9089 off of the iCert portal and onto Flag. I mean, do you have a plan?
We do have a plan. Perm is interesting. It's a little bit different. So one of the things that we've kind of looked heavily into is looking at the notice of filing, because that's kind of overlaps. You have to post it, you have to sort of track it, etc. Perm is a little bit of a different beast. I mean, that was my initial plan from the get-go. I, unfortunately, when I practiced, did not touch perm. So I am not a perm expert myself. We've worked with a number of attorneys and talked about it. It's definitely on the sort of long-term roadmap, but it's not there yet just because it doesn't work. Like it won't work really to digitize it quite yet. As far as we understand, if anyone here is watching or listening and you're just like, Roman, you're totally wrong, here's how to do it, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you because, that's again, been on our mind from day one. The other thing is and again, I'm not an expert on every, the alphabet soup. There are probably and likely other similar types of compliance requirements for other types of visas. And so we want to do more sort of research on where we can use our existing infrastructure to continue to support, compliance or other sort of facets of immigration that might not really be tied to case management or matter management, but are incredibly important and can be digitized. So this is fun for me. I love ideas. And again, please reach out to me if you have any thoughts or ideas. Like this is why I do what I do, to talk about, new things that we can build. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. The last thing I'll say on that point is that you would be shocked as to how many people, both low volume and high volume, are still doing their LCA and PAF compliance manually. I mean, hundreds, thousands of law firms and companies. So from our perspective, I mean, we can start building a million things, but like we want to get the LCA and PAF process down packed, and we want to make sure that as many people are doing it digitally as possible, even if it's not with us. Like I just hate the paper process. I just think it's ridiculous. And so if the worst case scenario is you look at LaborLess, you're like, it's not for me, I'm going to still cheer you on so you can do whatever you need to do to make it electronic, because that's sort of the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a niche area of legal practice, which had a certain traditional way of doing these things. And in the past, I mean, if you go back enough years, there weren't all that many firms doing labor certifications and these types of things. So, it's just that people sort of get stuck in the established way of doing things. But this is innovative, and this is disruptive, and this is in keeping with, the overall digitization of legal services. So this is where it's going. It's fascinating and a very nice looking product. And once again, we're thrilled to have the integration. All right. If anyone wants to ask any question before we finish, please, ask it now. Otherwise, we're going to finish. And the recording of this webinar will be available for people to view at their convenience. I want to thank all our attendees. I want to thank our guest, Roman Zelichenko, founder of LaborLess. I want to thank Chris Williams from Docketwise for engineering the webinar. And everyone, once again, have a great week. And it was a pleasure having all of you. Great product.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, James. Appreciate it.